Hey everyone.
Hello.
All right. We are looking at close to over 500 people joining us right now. So we're just going to wait a while for everyone to join in. But with that said, I would love for everyone to kind of share in the comments just on the right side of the panel where you're calling from and where you're just tuning in from. Vitaly and I would love to, learn about where where all the audience are from tonight.
Yeah. And I would love to know if you have any pet, like a cat or dog or whatever. Pictures would be a little bit too much. I think Felix wouldn't be. I think it would be too much. But what I would love to see is names of your pets. That would be nice. This would be a very
names of your.
But okay, Danda. We get Nana. We get Maya. We get Dora. Wow, that's interesting. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I think I want to have an export of this. This would be very useful for scientific reasons later. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay. Wow, this is an interesting way to start the conversation. Really, we have not had such a start of the conversation. So let's dive in. Let's dive in. I think there's a lot of people here. So hey everyone. So welcome to today's ADPList growth sessions. We have someone obviously very special with us here today. My name is Felix, and I'm the co-founder here at ADPList. So today we have Vitaly Friedman. So Vitaly, I just want to, kind of check in with you. Where are you calling from? I think you have always been, all over, but, where are you calling in from today?
This is a very difficult question. Why would you start with such a difficult question, Felix? Usually it would be somewhere between Vilnius, Brussels, Berlin, something like that, I would assume. So now I'm actually here in Berlin.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you're now in Berlin, and I assume it's afternoon, evening for you. But I think a lot of folks here seems to be calling from everywhere around the world. So welcome everyone. To give everyone a context and a quick introduction of Vitaly. So Vitaly is someone who loves beautiful content, and if you look at his Instagram, you look at his Twitter, obviously he has amazing stuff all around, all over his website as well. He's born in Belarus, studied computer science and math in Germany. So very unlike, I think, a lot of people in this room today who are, studying designers.
We can talk a lot about algorithms and Turing completeness and all of that. That's perfectly fine as well.
Okay, well, we try not to turn this session into math or science session, but we might go there. We might go there. And based on what we have also know about Vitaly is that while he's writing algebra and preparing for software engineering at night in the kitchen, at the same time, he also discovered passion for typography, interface design, and writing. And after working as a freelance designer and a developer for 6 years, he co-founded the one and only Smashing magazine back in 2006, a leading online magazine for designers and developers with over more than 3 million monthly visitors. His curiosity drove him from interface design to front-end development, to performance optimization, to accessibility, and to end-to-end, obviously, back to user experience over all the entire years. So, Vitaly, you had an interesting, history and obviously story. Yeah. First of all, did I miss anything? Everything from Germany.
No, Felix. I think at this point, I think the most important thing for me, it's always been, and if I look back, it always feels like it was kind of a major part or attribute, a feature. I was just always so obsessed with getting things to really understand things. To really understand things. This is why I had so much fun actually with mathematics, and because I just really had to dive in and really, really understand things. I think at this point it's really something that really keeps it going. So I think in many ways it's just somebody who is maybe a little bit unhealthily spending a little bit too much time unhealthily trying to understand the world. I guess that's me.
Awesome. Now, Vitaly, I would love to start off from a little bit of the story so that everyone kind of, gets to know you and learn about you a little bit more as well. I think, first of all, for everyone's context, Smashing magazine, it's one of the most popular websites, for designers, or at least, designers who are in senior already in their career today, because it's obviously created so early back then, during the sort of initial early days of the internet. But Vitaly, tell us a little bit about your story, right? You went from someone who transited from, really math and science into entirely starting your own business, and design. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey
Yeah, of
of
course.
transition? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't recommend anybody to take this transition, I have to say, but it was a quite an interesting transition for me, because the honest truth is, and I mean, we're all friends here, so I can be perfectly honest, right? My father really wanted me to be a developer, and more specifically a PHP developer. It was like a thing. In many ways, I tried very hard to become a very good PHP developer back in 2000, what, 4, 5 or so. And I realized after 1 year or so that I'm a horrible PHP developer. I mean, you have no idea how bad I was, because I remember vividly I had to create this Sudoku game. And oh my God, this was probably the worst thing I've ever built in my life. It was so slow. It would take hours to solve a Sudoku. And I think you can do better than that. Anybody in this room, I'm sure, can do it better than this. So I kind of really understood that, okay, programming is maybe something that I need to take a little bit lighter. So I jumped into the web because I was very excited about that. And so it was like the design and CSS and JavaScript and Flash. Anybody remembers Flash? Okay,
Well,
hearts.
I think
That's unexpected. That's really unexpected.
that is a lot of reactions there.
Yeah, yes. So it was kind of the time when I got very excited, and then this is kind of I got to the JavaScript via ActionScript, and in many ways it was all kind of this ongoing journey. And then, probably one of the most important things around me is that I always, every now and again, I get bored. So I got bored with CSS, then I got bored with ActionScript, then I got bored with Flash, and then I moved to accessibility, and then from there I moved to UX, and then I moved back and forth, and it was kind of all the journey. And I think it's probably a story that everybody has it or had or something similar, because in 2006 there was no website that was actually somehow collecting useful CSS things and JavaScript things and design stuff, and so we thought, let's just create one. And it was like actually 18 years. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's been 18 years. But what I'm really excited about is that it still excites me. So I kind of made the right choice, I guess, in some way. So I'm not just for those of you who, just for the record, I'm not a PHP developer. So I wasn't a good one back in 2004 or 5. And I'm sure not a good one today. I have nothing against PHP developers per se. We can be friends, right? That's fine.
Yeah.
But that's just not me. And so this is how it all started then. And then we decided, let's do a bit more. Let's do books. Let's do conferences, workshops, and then off we go.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like first of all, it sounds like a tough journey. I don't think anyone wants to, kind of, as you already gave the disclaimer that it's not a path for everyone, or you wouldn't recommend. So thanks for sharing that. And moving on to later part of your journey, and we'll talk a little bit about sort of freelancing and consulting on UX and stuff like that a little bit more. But you started Smashing Magazine, which, from what I read online, it's one of the sort of most visited sites at that time, at least for designers, at least for people who are looking to learn about tech or building things online. Talk us a little bit about that journey, right, of starting something completely new and turning into such a popular website that many people were using back then.
I think for me it was just a matter of commitment, to be honest. This is something that I've been keeping as a golden rule for me today still. So if anything, I just commit. And I commit to something for a particular amount of time. So for Smashing Magazine back in the day, the idea was, okay, well, 2 articles a week for a year. Let's see what happens. And I mean, there is no but. There is no exceptions. It's 2 articles a week for a year. I actually did the same thing on LinkedIn as well. Like a couple of years ago, I just became a little bit more active, I guess, on LinkedIn. The story was, okay, I need to get 2 posts on LinkedIn a week for a year. That's all. You commit to that, but you need to commit to something that's manageable. And so what we realized is, and of course, once you post something, cannot be random. It needs to be useful. It needs to be interesting. It needs to be helpful. It needs to be kind of have some value. So that was kind of the only principle that we had. Right, and it's something I've been following along since then. I think for 18 years now, because every day I wake up and I ask myself, so what is it that I don't know of? And I kind of try to make sure that at least half an hour, maybe 1 hour, I can spend on learning something I've never learned before. This is a very simplistic reason for that, a very personal reason. I feel better I feel better when I know that after a day passed by, I learned something that I didn't know the previous day. And I don't mean it in a way like you find in all these inspirational quotes, learn something every day, whatnot. But I just want to feel like I'm a little bit better than I was before, in a way that I see the connections. I see how to do this. I see like, this is a nice case study from that company doing that. This is an interesting work
Yeah.
done here. Wow, I never heard of that before. So I want to be moving a little bit to kind of feel better and stronger. And so the decision back then actually, I don't know, maybe it was just a happy coincidence. It just happened that the thing that we were producing and publishing on the web actually ended up being useful to many people. And so it was literally like 7 or 8 months when we actually started getting requests for advertising and stuff like that. And that was, I mean, look at me. Like I'm, I'm not a serious guy in a suit and a tie. It was like a big business plan. Oh, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. It was more like, let's do something that we really like, that we actually want, that we feel like everybody will be benefiting from as well. And let's see if people do like it. I mean, you need a business plan, don't get me wrong, right? But I'm just not that kind of person that would be working with Excel spreadsheets and stuff.
Thank you so much for that, Vitaly. So to sum it up, sort of like it's really a lot of commitment, and it's a lot of, I think that's what you say, trying to commit, but also at the same time be better, 2%, 1% every single day. And that probably compounds. And I'm curious because, it's, first of all, I think as a designer, being a founder is, it's not a common thing, right? We don't see a lot of that. We'll touch a little bit about that later as well today. But, talk a little bit about what lessons you take away from there, right? Of starting Smashing Magazine. What are some of the key lessons you take away? I think both as a designer and as a founder. Like, now looking back 20 years, what are some of the key takeaways from there?
I think for me, it's always been about, I think like there is this one ingredient that I think many of us in much of our work, be it design or be it anything else, kind of underestimate, and that's the people part. It's also the most difficult part. And I think probably the best thing I've done in my career so far, in my kind of life so far, is really investing in a good relationship with good, interesting people. And I really mean it. And again, it's not like this fluffy, talk about motivations and stuff like that. But I feel like, first of all, I learn a lot from people, right, who know things. That's extremely valuable. On the other hand, as you maintain relationships, these people also change and they also grow and they kind of bring you to places. I would say that many of my big scale projects that I kind of had in the last 10 years, from European Parliament and many others, they kind of all ended up coming from small conversations with interesting people who I didn't even know who they are at the time, who they were at the time. People switch jobs, they move around, and that kind of networking, right? Communities or networking or connections or relationships or just people, that's the best thing you can ever have. I mean, full stop. We spent an incredible amount of time talking about tooling, talking about software, talking about even design patterns like the accordions, the tables and stuff like that. I think probably those things that I learned about them, of course, are extremely valuable. But I probably wouldn't be where I am today without the wonderful people that happen to be in the path. But I think that what we often do is we often kind of take it for granted almost. Like, so we have these people with us. But I mean, frankly, the most memorable and deep relationships I have are with people I've been working with for many, many, many years. And there is friendships and there is this kind of work relationships, right? And like even if you look at Smashing, we had people who've been working in the company for 12 years. Now that's unbelievable. Like, to me, this seems like, wow, you're working with somebody for 12 or 13 years. That's just unbelievable. And of course, you know these people really well and you have this incredible amount of trust and you just look at each other and you understand each other right away. That's so incredible. So I would say the best decision I made came through important people. The best kind of collaborations and projects came through people as well. I never really advertised that we do any kind of consultancy or anything like that. There is no web page, no nothing of that kind. But it's kind of really comes through that. That's one thing, I guess. And the other thing is, you always need to be challenged. That was very important for me from the start. I think I don't mean it in a way that you need to get always just people who are better than you, although it's of course always a good idea. but you always need to be challenged by trying to force yourself into areas where you feel uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. That's like throwing people in the water. I like that somehow. Frankly, I'm not a person who can swim in cold water. And I forced myself to do that and kind of got better at that over time. Or I hate it every single time. But you're going to get this resilience, right? And then you also kind of end up learning as well. And it's probably a good idea to learn a few things about Excel and finances as you start your company. That can only help, right? I had a co-founder, so I didn't have to do that. But I think I should have, and I would highly recommend that.
Wow, that is a lot of lessons there to just take away. And if I could kind of sum that up, I think it's a lot of, as you say, kind of like, showing up every day and really, focusing on the things that, like not just the technicalities, but what you say is like focusing on people, right? Because that is probably the hardest thing for anyone to solve if you think about starting something, or if you have a longer term vision, which I think that's something that I find it really impressive. Which brings me to my next question, which is, Smashing Magazine has been here for 20 years. Now, I think everyone in this room, and I'm just going to be really real here, is that a lot of startups, they don't last for 20 years, right? Some of them struggle to even last for 10 years, maybe 5. And I just wonder, when I look at Smashing Magazine and I look at your profile, I just wonder, what do you think you have done differently for it to have such a long-term, longevity of a company, of a startup? Versus what people are doing right now? What is the difference? What do you think you have done differently?
I mean, I wouldn't say that one thing is always better than the other. I think that there are also having a startup for 5 years, maybe just the right time for the startup to exist, and it's perfectly fine. For us, it's just this idea of thinking a little bit more in terms of timeless. And I mean it in a way that we would not, for example, have an article about, we had it in the past, but we would not have an article about trends now, right? That just isn't really interesting to us. What we're looking at is things that will be surviving that, I would guess. So what would be still relevant 2-3 years from now? So of course you could have a tutorial about things and whatnot, right? But for example, I've never been interested in, and that's my personal opinion, I don't mean to be offending anyone, but I would never be interested in, design trends 2024, this kind of articles. That's just not relevant to me, because what I find relevant is just things that people learn in 2024. That would be more important for me. Like case studies. Okay, this is now we have a multi-brand, multi-themed, multi-whatever design system. That's how we build it. Okay, I will read that, right? I'll be trying to find if it's relevant for me. So this is kind of articles that will also go on Smashing too. Or we will be publishing things like how to make a strong case for accessibility, because that's something that I will probably, unfortunately, have to fight for the next 10 years or maybe 15, hopefully not. Right, so that's things that you can use. This is what I find kind of really real value, right? I find it absolutely incredible when I discover some articles published in 2013 in very old and very broken blogs, which highlight things like, this is how you get started to understand what UX writing is. Although I didn't even think that UX writing existed back then, but apparently it did, right? And you look around and you realize, okay, there are all these little things of how people are doing it, kind of really setting things up. And sometimes these articles might be 5-10 years old, still very relevant. And I think that one of the things that kind of guides people to Smashing as well is that there are many articles like that who, although they've been published 5, 10, 15 years ago, right? So that I think is, I wouldn't say it's better or worse, it's just kind of a position. And I wish that, this is what I really want to see. Maybe I'm just too paranoid about this. But in the times of AI, I want to see something humane everywhere. And I was thinking about this previously, but I would love to see typos in articles. I would like to see typos in comments. I would like to see broken links that are then corrected, or anything of that. I want that, right? I don't want, we always see these examples of Chrome extensions that generate LinkedIn comments. I'm like, yeah, we can do that, but what? Right? I just don't get that. Maybe that's me being very old, but that's kind of me. That's kind of my take.
Thanks for sharing that, Vitaly. By the way, I'm not sure if it's just me or that your audio settings might have changed a little bit, and it seems that there are some background noise there. So maybe if you could change your sound input too. what you have done before. I think that'd be great. Okay, cool. Thanks so much for that, Vitaly. So I think a lot of what you say, I know you're adjusting your mic right now, but I'll just kind of summarize up for everyone here. I think what Vitaly is saying here is really, the idea of creating something where the value of it is almost timeless, right? It's almost timeless. That it's not just a trend. It's not just going to be a 1-year thing, but it's something that people can continue to find value as they grow in their journey. And I think that's the best product. That's the best service, to be honest. And so thanks for sharing that, Vitaly. So I think first of all, that is a great one, and also I think your mic has now been adjusted back, which is great.
Yes.
Okay, yep, that's perfect. So we're gonna move on to the next one, which is freelancing. I think, which is the other part of your career, which is now in UX consulting. I believe you do some work for many different companies as well. How did you think about transitioning that from Smashing Magazine, your role at Smashing Magazine, which is more management stuff, into sort of consulting and being a part of so many different companies, whether it be from a freelancing, advising, or consulting perspective? Like, how was that transition and what was different?
Yeah, very good point. I think there are two sides of that, I guess. The one side is that back in 2014 or 13 or so, I guess, I just got really bored. That's the story of my life. I always get bored with something. And what I was realizing that as editor-in-chief of Smashing Magazine, which is all around design and development, I wasn't really doing any design or development work. So that felt a little bit of a disconnect right there. So I also like designing. I also like front. I like CSS. I like all of this. I like JavaScript. I like accessibility. So that's I like UX. I like all of that. And I couldn't do it because I was having meetings about people, about all these things, which I kind of maybe not really great at. So that was kind of one of the phases when I realized, okay, I want to do more hands-on stuff, right? And so I was, but it was all, it was not very active, I would say. There would be maybe 2-3 projects in a given year, but they would be also quite small-scale projects, maybe 1 month each or 3 to 5 weeks each, I would say, right? But then, of course, 2020 happened. In 2020, we were really in a position where I realized, we aren't smashing conferences. We couldn't run any conferences. We were running, at this time, also shipping books around the world and, COVID and stuff. So no book, it's very, very expensive to ship things, economy down and all. So we had to do something. And so I had to be more proactive in that. And so I started doing more, like way more, basically filling in my full time with projects. And that's kind of how it really spiked, I would say, in the last, since 2020, right? So for the last 4.5 years, it's been, I would say, way more time consultancy and freelancing than anything else, right? And because we have a very good team that has been working together for such a long time, in many ways, the company is almost autonomous because of the people who know what they're doing and how to do those things. So it was almost very natural. The first phase coming from me just being bored, and the second from the necessity to make money.
Right. Gotcha. And I take it that, it's obviously still ongoing and it's making you some money. That is why you're still in it, which is great, I think. So I want to maybe, now that we're at the freelancing part of today's conversation, I want to break it down into a little bit like a funnel, right? So first, which is how you find your clients, and then we move into how you engage, and then how you retain them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? And what you learn throughout each part of that. I think the first one is, and a lot of folks here might be already in a full-time job, or they might be full-time freelancing. But I think this could benefit both, because a lot of people who are in the full-time jobs, as I know, they want to do something outside of their full-time jobs. They want to earn a side income. They want to work on different projects that might just be outside of their industry right now, which I think it's fair. It's people need a creative outlet for that. The first thing that I think comes to a lot of mind is, where do I start? How do I find my clients? What can you share, to that question? What are some things where you can advise on when someone is starting? How can they start, and where do they start, most importantly?
Yeah, I would say one of the parts that I think is really, really important is, again, this relationships with people, be it networking or anything of that kind, like really kind of connecting with people. But I would say that the only thing I've done throughout these 20 years is just trying to be quite visible. I would say in many ways that is it. So it doesn't matter in what way it's you kind of present yourself, be it through Figma templates or kits or starter kits or whatever. It's research, bundles, packs, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. So be there where people are looking for you. That I think is really, really significant. In my case, that's like I'm posting things. This is kind of my learning journey. Every day I learn something new. I try to put together in a way that I can make sense of it later for myself, right? And then I share it with everybody else as well. That's kind of my journey. Also, this is why, by the way, much of the work I'm doing is coming through those channels from being visible. I don't do any kind of outbound marketing where I try to reach out to hundreds and thousands of people to see who would like to work with me. I just try to be noticeable and visible, because every time I work on anything, I try to make sure that there is this kind of diversity of different income streams. So this is why, for example, we have the books, we have the conferences, we have the workshops, and we now have a video course, right? And we have the consultancy, and we have all these different things. So something bad in the world must happen for all of this to go down, right? Which have happened in the past, fortunately and not fortunately for us, right? So this has happened, but you just need to be prepared. It's kind of almost like a risk mitigation. And so for me, the main strategy, maybe that's not the best one, right? But it has been working for me really well, is to just be visible as much as you can, and just make it extremely difficult for people not to stumble upon you in whatever field or niche you are. Like, you do this really well, Felix. I mean, at this point, if anybody's looking for mentorship platform or anything, I think it would be very, very difficult to not stumble upon ADPList, if I'm being very honest, right? And if you look at, I don't know, content around CSS and UX, and there is UX Collective, try to not to stumble upon UX Collective. Good luck, right? Or Smashing at some point if you're looking for CSS or front-end stuff. So that, on the other hand, requires some commitment. So you need to be there and you need to commit to something. And I mean really commit. So it doesn't have to be like 2, 3, 4 articles a week or whatnot. Maybe not, writing is not for everyone. Maybe YouTube is for you. That's fine. Right? Maybe one podcast 1 month per month is also fine, right? As long as it's really, really high quality. I mean, the thing is that we always often think that we need a lot of people to be successful. No, you don't. You need to have enough passionate people who will move mountains to support you and push you forward. That's all you need. You need maybe 100, maybe 200 people who really care about you and really care about, making sure that you are successful. That's all you need, because they will move mountains for you, right? You don't necessarily need to be everywhere at all times, right? But to find those people, you need to be investing in relationships and connections and networking, and you need to be visible. These are, I think, the two main ingredients that I would always recommend to keep close.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vitaly. That was really, really golden advice, and I take that personally as well. It's great that you say that. So one, as you mentioned, invest deep into relationship, and second one, be visible. So that's really the top of funnel question, right? I think for a lot of us who might want to start something or already is sort of like jumping into freelance or consulting. The second thing is as we move deeper and down into the funnel, which is really engaging clients and sort of the work that you do. I'm curious from your side of sort of building your own product as Smashing Magazine, or even at different companies versus freelancing and consulting. What would you say is the biggest difference between working on a company itself and one single product versus jumping around and context switching, right? What is the differences, and do you think it's hard to context switch around, or what is your strategy around that?
No, I think it's kind of just slightly different things. So for me, there are two things that are kind of important here. On the one hand, you have ownership, and on the other, you have learnings. So with the product team, if you're working on a particular product and you own the company, or you are kind of a major part of the company, well, you are guiding it, you are managing it, you are moving it forward. So you have full ownership. You can do whatever you want, right? This could be dangerous. This could be very inspiring, and you can do so many things to really, really turn things around, explore other things, like really realize your dreams, if you like, right? That's, I love, I appreciate that. I mean, we can set up, I don't know, weird things like ice trucks, which are branded with cats, because we can, right? Nobody can forbid me to do that. It's also not that expensive to be honest, right? So that's kind of nice. And we can do this at conferences. We can bring people together. That's really, we can really realize the vision. And I mean the vision, it's not necessarily about just having a product and having the product in a way kind of to get it to the point where we can exit. We never wanted to exit, to be honest. We never felt like we want to exit. I'm not saying that one is better or worse than the other. It's just in our case, it's more like a lifestyle product. I really enjoy being a part of this and learning something every day and be learning something from wonderful people and have all these people around. That's it. I wouldn't want to endanger that by selling the company to a third owner. That's just not what I want, but that's perfectly fine, of course, to exit as well. There is no, it's like everybody chooses what works for them. So that's one side, like ownership. Like if you're working as a consultant, you don't have much ownership except from the work that you're doing. Maybe it's report that you're writing. But the problem with that is sometimes you prepare those reports and strategies and whatnot, and you never see how they actually are implemented because you're gone by the time when it's actually going to be produced. That's something I was missing for a very long time, right? On the other hand, you might be actually working hands-on with the team, but then it's kind of limited, right? You're working for a while, maybe not full-time, but just like, 10 hours, maybe a week. So you don't get the full insight. So many decisions are made without you still. So ownership, probably less. But you can do, depending on the company, you can do quite much in terms of the impact that you're producing. But I would say when it comes to learnings, that's the opposite. Because if I'm at the company, I feel like, well, I'm deciding, or we're deciding what we're going to do, where we're going, right? And that's pretty much it. Of course, we'll be researching and doing this and that to understand if we're moving in the right direction, but it's still the same domain. Now with consultancy, what I really like is, as I mentioned, I like being thrown in cold water. When I start working on a new project, I have no idea. I have people around me who are just so different, and I have absolutely no clue what they're like, what they care about, and everything. What is the insurance business like? I have no clue. What is the European law and legislation? How do they work? How is it all like this vocabulary? Like the way they're speaking is just like, I don't understand. Is it still English? I think it is, but I don't understand, right? So there are incredible learnings along this domain. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of throw yourself into healthcare or edtech or gaming, right? And it's like, this is, wow. I mean, the learning experience, there is a learning curve, of course, right? But the learning experience I get from that is phenomenal. I don't get that as a product owner, frankly.
Wow.
Because I'm in my domain and I feel relatively comfortable there, and that's it, right?
Yes.
You can still expand and explore, but that's still, you're probably not going to do healthcare if you're working on accounting application.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, Vitaly. So really, as a product manager or product owner in that sense, where you're designing for product, there is a plateau on that learning curve. And after some time, you kind of, slow down on that. But as you mentioned, as freelancing, it almost always feels like you're going up the curve because there's so many different projects. What do you think? I'm curious because you mentioned that there is so many changes and so many things that are new. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges or some of the, in your case, I'd love to hear a little bit about what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made as a freelancer, right, during this process, whether be it from a design perspective or from a general freelancer perspective?
I would say that very early on, like when I was starting out, I would be jumping immediately in solutions. I feel like this is because I felt like, I've been around in this industry for a while. So, if somebody comes up with a navigation problem, give me a break. I think I know what I would do there, right? And I was totally underestimating the complexity of some of the issues that I have. And so from there, I started actually doing the opposite. One of the things that I decided to do, I think it was also 4 or 5 years ago now, before I start working on anything, God bless you, Felix, we need this happy and alive. The moment, what I changed entirely was I started setting up spreadsheets and scope of work. And I can share it actually with you, just so you can get a sense. And I think it's very important. I cannot emphasize how important it is. Let me just share it for a moment. Entire screen 2. And by the way, dear friends, feel free to take a screenshot of that or whatnot. It's perfectly fine. I'm just going to show it in just a second. So before every project, what I'm going to try is to prepare like a 2 pages document or so, sometimes a little bit more than that, which answers all of these points or questions, 10 of them. And that's a lot of text, right? But I'm going to kind of show it anyway, because I think it's really, really valuable. Now, when starting the project, what I'm going to try to do is to first, okay, my clicker doesn't work. I'm going to try first to really reflect back to stakeholders how I understood the problem that I'm actually solving here. Because when I work in an organization with, I don't know, 15, 20,000 people, nobody trusts me. And why should they trust me? I don't know who they are, and I might be coming in to disrupt their work or change the way they're working. They have no trust, although we need to build that trust. And that means that I need to kind of explain to them that, okay, after all these interviews that we were running, right, this is how we understood the problem. Then this is what we believe the solution requires with a breakdown of tasks. Then these are the assumptions that we're making, that stakeholders will be available, that we have, maybe this limitation, right, or anything that we can use these tools and so on and so forth. This is how it's going to work. This is the process that we're following, right? This is where and when we will need your timely input from stakeholders. Now, these are the milestones and the timeline. That's a delivery date that we're committing to for that fixed scope, right, that we have defined at the top. And I think it's really, really important that we kind of write it down. So that's basically the sections that you would get in that scope of work document. Then if you're a freelancer or a consultant, that's the total cost of the work. Then what I always started, this was a big kind of deal breaker or change that I introduced. In every single document, almost in every single conversation that I have with my clients or stakeholders, I would always include this phrase: late scope changes are expensive and cause delays. Late scope changes are expensive and cause delays every single time, because they just don't understand or don't know that late scope changes are expensive and cause delays. And once they get this sort of sensitivity around that, all of a sudden these changes of a project meet of the timeline or the scope meet project disappear. And then also what I write in there is that all scope changes are estimated and built separately. It doesn't mean that I will have to do that. If I want to maintain a good relationship with the client, with the customer, I will not do that. But if you end up with a very difficult client that requests significant changes mid-project, I can always refer to that to at least estimate and maybe build separately, right? So these 10 points I have to have covered. And when I started doing that, it changed the dynamic entirely. Because then I kind of explain also to stakeholders like how I'm working and what we need to keep in mind and all of that. And they kind of understand my perspective, but at the same time, also understand their perspective. So that was a big change, right? And that really, really helped. But also when I look at complexity, right, that kind of helps us to be a bit more predictable around how we're working. Probably in terms of complexity, one of the most difficult parts was this. I'm still sharing, right, Felix?
Yes, you are. You are right? Sharing. I think we lost your camera there, but it's okay. We can focus on your screen for now.
Okay, so I'm just going to share it just briefly, because ultimately what was probably the most difficult part is to work on a project where I had to find a way to define design success and to define design KPIs for design work. Because if you look around, engineers have their KPIs, HR have their KPIs, finance have their KPIs, sales have their KPIs, marketing have their KPIs. Everybody has their KPIs, but we usually don't speak about design KPIs. So if you're working on anything, you want to be able to show or indicate the impact that you are producing with the design initiatives. So what we started doing is this kind of design KPI trees. If you ever worked on marketing teams, you probably will be familiar with something like this, opportunity trees or anything similar. This is basically a way, and I mean, this is a very long story to explain it in detail. This is a very kind of a way to connect design initiatives that are these yellow boxes over here with metrics of how you're going to measure the impact of these actions with KPIs that are then being reported to senior management, and then find that connection and find these branches that actually will bring that ultimate OKR or business goal that we have in front of us, right? That's difficult. I think that this is really a difficult part, because once you get to the point where you need to argue about the business impact of your design decisions as you're prioritizing them, as you're choosing them, and so on, you really have to connect the dots between the business side and the design side. And this is more on the process side of things, but that's really difficult to do. So we had to come up with something, and this was kind of the outcome of that. And I have to say that it worked, but it was probably one of the most complicated things. And it's something that I think is missing in many conversations. We speak about how to make designs better, but we don't necessarily speak about how to sell design better to business. And what I mean by sell is not just make an impression that it's working, but to make sure that it's working, to choose the design initiatives that will be performing to drive that goal that we're hired to do, right? And so this is where this really, really difficult part of really picking the right decisions to make sure that things are moving in the right direction are important. And it's not about necessarily the colors or typography, but features or ideas or things that need to work for the success to come. Right.
Well, I think I have a quick question. Just looking at this right now. Is this available anywhere online? Did you have you wrote about this? Because I love what you say about.
Not yet.
Okay.
Gotcha, I will though.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. Please. We would love that.
My camera.
I think we lost your.
Just a second.
Okay, we lost your camera there. Okay. Yeah. So it's just.
Typically, this is kind of like a bigger conversation, because you need to involve a lot of different things for this to work well, right? But that's, I think, very, very significant, right? I can also show another one if that's interesting.
Sure, yeah, go for it. I mean, folks here would love if you guys would want, please give a thumbs up reaction. Okay, I think a lot of people want to just see, what's going on there. But I really like what you say, which is, it's really not just about making a few pixels better, but also learning how to sell your design better.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I think that's
how to present, how to defend, how to explain. I think it's kind of always something that I also miss, is that we need to be much better at storytelling about our design. And I mean, and again, I don't mean it in a kind of fluffy kind of way, but when we show the design, we need to be able to explain why we are where we are, right? And in terms that business understands, right? Because again, this is a bit ironic, but very often what happens is, and if I can actually share the screen again for a moment, the terminology that business is using and that designers is using is just very, very different. So let me just share the screen again. Just a second, everyone. Sorry for taking a little bit of your time here. Just want to make sure that I got it right. Here we go. And sharing the screen. I hope my camera will not disappear. Right. Like, this is actually something that was coming from Jason from 36 Signals or Basecamp, where again, the terminology we're using in terms of business on the left and the terminology we're using in terms of UX is just so different. And so when we're speaking about things like on the business side, we're speaking about conquering the market, capturing the mind share, converting people. Why would you want to convert people? What did they do to you, right? Following up, picking the battles, attracting more eyeballs, increasing lifetime value, like as if you were exploiting lifetime value from people, right? But then as designers, we are the soft creatures, speaking about reducing friction, enabling and helping people, refining touch points, building trust, understanding user needs and things like that, right? So we need to be kind of very careful about that. So when I'm speaking about UX, I will not speak the business language, of course, but for example, instead of saying reduce friction as we have in the top right corner, right, I would probably say improving conversion by reducing friction. That's a slightly different kind of tangent in there, right? And one other thing that I wanted to share here is this thing, which I also started doing recently. It's not released yet, but I am going to release it eventually. This is the UX strategy canvas, which was inspired by Dan Moll's Canvas for Design Systems. And what I have here is basically everything that I need to do in order to make sure, and actually I can drop it in the chat. Just please keep in mind that this is not quite complete yet, but feel free to use it if it's useful.
Wow. Oh my God. I think everyone here is like jumping with joy that the fact that this is so exclusive just here. So thank you so much, Vitaly. And I just want to encourage everyone to just share them online publicly. I know some folks are already sharing some takeaways on Instagram or Twitter and LinkedIn. So do tag Vitaly and ADPList as well as you share. We would love to kind of make sure that we jump in and share that forward with even more people who are not here.
Yeah, just keep in mind, I still have to finish it actually, because I think some things are not editable. So feel free to use it for now, but I probably will need to clean it up a little before we go like big public with
yes. For anyone who is sharing, please put a disclaimer that Vitaly is still working on it, but it's a live working document. All right, thanks so much, Vitaly.
No problem.
Go for it.
Right. So just one thing I want to mention here is that like there is a lot of stuff obviously here, and that's kind of almost like a checklist of all the things to keep in mind. Because for example, that's the advice I can give you right away. If you come to your product manager or your manager, right, and you start talking about risk management, governance, ownership, better estimates, you will be the most loved designer on the planet, right? Because most designers don't speak about risks, don't speak about governance, and all those things that might feel like, or stakeholder engagement, right? Included in your vocabulary, right? This will change everything for you, right? And not only your position in the company, right? It will really be a deal breaker. That kind of sends a signal to your PM that you actually care and you think and you understand business side as well. That's a really nice kind of path forward in your career as well. That was a significant change that I kind of took from there. That's I think.
Awesome.
I mean, I can keep going, but I think we also had some other topics to discuss.
Yes, I think we do have quite a few things that we do have quite a few questions and from the public, so we will probably take some time for that as well. So thanks for sharing all of that. I think a lot of sort of like, if we look at it from a burger perspective, you shared about visibility, you shared about investing in relationship, and now you really talk about the right questions to ask. The process of selling your design, selling your sort of like your way of thinking. And the last thing that I want to talk about is almost, I would say, like the first one, but a little bit different, which is, now that you've got the clients, now that you're working with people, how do you retain them? What are some of the key strategies for retaining clients and customers from a consultant and freelancing perspective?
I like it so much that you brought it up. There is one little thing that you might find very, very helpful, dear friends who are joining us now, because very often what we realize or what we think is, well, we get the brief and then we work on that brief and then we kind of come up with some design and then we send it and then hopefully get a sign off or green light and that's it, right? To me, it must be different. So when I think about any design project, okay, I'm going to share another one. Sorry, Felix, I have to show this as well. I just want to make sure that nobody is running away because this is quite a massive thing. Hold on, let me just make sure I can find it. Here, okay, I'm going to share it right here. So I need to find the view here. Okay, so share the screen and entire screen number 2. Okay, so what I do is, what we try to do, we use this thing, I mean, we do this in our workshops, and if you're interested, we have this like UX workshop and stuff around this as well. Just take a look at some of the work that I'm doing, the smart interface design pattern stuff, right? What we basically create is a big event storm. These are the different events that must occur for the success of the project. So we'll start here somewhere where we are right here now, right? And then there is a research phase, and there are some key events along the lines, exploration, experimentation, and then all the way at the end, there is successful delivery. The interesting part around this is that we always start from the end. We start from here, and then we go backwards in time. We start from the future state we want to achieve, and then we go back. That's very important, because when you start from the beginning and you go to the end, in the beginning, you would have all your usual suspects, the research, the personas, the jobs to be done, all of this stuff. But then it gets really thin as you get to the end. That's a problem, because usually there are many different paths that can bring you to that future state. And so if you consider all the things that absolutely must happen, or all the events that must happen before this occurs, then you're kind of looking also at all the risks. right? So from there, we cluster it all into different lanes. So we have things that are happening on different levels. And I always keep this in front of me. This is my sticky note. It's like a very professional way of managing it. Because for every project, right, you would have different lanes. One of them would be stakeholders. So as you can see here, stakeholders must be involved all the time, right? We just need to figure out at which point and how frequently we will be involving them, right? Then there are users. Then there is typically also risks. And then there is typically also design system. So different lanes that are always happening. And so every UX project will be like that. Sometimes zoomed in into, like, say, Q3 or Q4, right? Sometimes for the whole like life cycle of like a year or so, right? And kind of look into everything that might be happening. And then you're kind of looking in, when do we involve stakeholders? Right? When do we need to get the sign-offs and everything like that? How do we involve them? How do we involve users? When, for testing, for research, and so on? How do we get them? Right? And then also design system, and then finally also the risks. So we are prepared. And that's a lot of stuff. But if you look at this is a relaunch project. You can see that's a lot. This visualizes the complexity of UX work we're doing. Right? That's really visible. And once you present it to your stakeholders, they understand, oh, okay. So that's why I cannot change my mind in the middle of the project, right? Because this will disrupt everything on different levels. And that's more like the strategic part. It's kind of UX strategic part, which is, it's not easy to set up. And this is actually an example of one of the workshops we were running in January, right? So that's quite massive, I have to say.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Vitaly. So to kind of sum it up, is almost like, if you want to retain someone, it's to really get them involved in the process and more than just kind of, approving and being at the final stage, is really getting them involved in the process, which is really what you have displayed here. So thanks for sharing that. I think we're running a little bit out of time, but, we have a little bit more questions, but I would love to open up the floor for 2 questions from the stage, on the stage from some of the audience here today. So these questions are voted by the community. So I'm going to show the first one on stage first. This is by Sherry Wu. She's a senior growth manager at Enforce. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. She's based in San Francisco. Hi, Vitaly. Great to have you with us. Awesome. I wonder, in a world where social media grabs everyone's attention, how do you manage your energy while staying connected with your audience?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think from my end, I'm just trying to be, there is so much bad stuff happening in the world, right? And I don't know, it's like when I was growing up, we didn't have much and we didn't feel extremely excited all the time. But I think that one thing that kind of came across to me is that if you want to survive and you want to be moving in the right direction, you kind of have to be optimistic and have trust in people and in that things are going to get better. Right, so kind of staying optimistic was important. And so I kind of stayed optimistic. I think as you can tell from my color, I'm very optimistic. I really strongly believe in yellow. Yellow is my color, right? And I'm trying to stay this way. It doesn't matter, what happens. Kind of really looking at the bright side of things if I can, right? But on the other hand, what I also want is to learn. And I kind of try to connect these 2 things. And so I guess that what I am actually doing in the end is I'm trying to combine those 2 things of learning, and which also brings us to connection with the audience, and being optimistic, right? And it's not my goal to kind of grab everyone's attention. Again, you don't need a lot of people to be successful. You need just enough people who care, right, for you to be successful. And that is really, really important. And, like very often we'll be looking at numbers, like how many visits you get and stuff like that, and how many LinkedIn likes and so on. But I think what's more important, I wish there was something like that, is just those people who like you all the time or who reply to you all the time, just make connection with them. That can be so incredible. It can be so powerful. Like one of the things that I really appreciate is by sharing what I learn, I get to, connect and talk to people who are working as a design director at Wise Bank or N26 or at Volkswagen and so on, which is something I would never do if I wasn't visible. And so that gives me more energy. I guess this is kind of this one thing leads to another, and then before you know it, you're actually feeling better by sharing something that other people like and actually connecting with people who are interested. So it's not despite, but kind of things together somehow that makes the connection.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vitaly. So to sum it up, that really goes back to investing in a relationship, and that, you don't need a lot of people, but you need high quality people. You need people who really is passionate about what you're talking about, what you're building, and willing to move mountains for you. As I think you talk a little bit about that later. So I think that's really the crux of what you just shared. So thank you so much for that. And Sherry, great question, and hopefully that answers your question. All right. The next question we have is by Melvin, which is a little bit about AI. Vitaly, I think you try to stay away from this topic at the start.
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to stay away, Felix, actually. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, so the question goes: are you embracing AI tools in your process and the development of Smashing Magazine? This is by Melvin Hogan, principal at MEH Consulting, Kansas City.
Yes, also a good question. I think in our end, what we're trying to do is to understand, kind of use it when it makes sense. So I would say, so in my design work, one of the ways of doing that is to really identify some of the critical situations or maybe edge cases that we haven't considered yet. That is helpful, right? For example, on the other hand, I would say, I always try to question my decisions through the lens of AI. That's where it helps me. So I would say, okay, I have this statement that if I do this and I do that, and I'm going to get here. Challenge me. This is kind of the attitude that I'm coming to it, right? But I would not say that we don't have ChatGPT or other AI tools written articles or comments. Everything that I post, for example, on LinkedIn, it's manually written. There is no ChatGPT in place or in use. And again, I'm not saying that one is right and the other is wrong, but it just, in many ways, to me, it feels like this is what I want to see on the web as well. I want to see more humane stuff, right? I'm sure there will be a lot of opportunities for us to use more AI in the future, right? And I think that at this point, we are maybe a little bit old school. So we use it when it kind of makes sense to do research, to understand something better, to question yourself better, anything like that, but not at scale, like pre-writing or preparing or piping everything through AI generated pipeline or whatnot. That's not quite where we are. Oh, I think you're muted, Felix.
Oops. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Vitaly. I'm going to mark that as answered. So we have come towards the end of today's session, but last few questions for you, which I think are mostly regarding about, sort of in general, your advice for designers and careers, right? I think one of the things that a lot of people have also asked is, how did you get to where you are today? But I think beyond that is we touched on advice, a lot of advice, especially I think from your journey transitioning to starting Smashing Magazine and then to huge part of what you're doing today, which is consulting and freelancing. Are there any, in general, advice for designers or leaders here today, that we haven't touched on that you want to share, that you kind of, want the world to know about it?
Yeah, I think one significant part, and I wish that somebody told me that before, because, you have to know that I was growing up in Minsk, Belarus, and this is not a country where you will be investing or anything of that kind. This is kind of know how that works. You didn't trust banks back in the day and everything. Well, today in Belarus still. But one thing that I think is really quite significant is that you really need to start working early on your passive income. I think it's really, really significant for anybody, really, in any way, because you need to be kind of diversifying in many ways. I mean, even if you sell something for, I don't know, $30 a month, right, and you have maybe 2 sales or 3 sales, oh yeah, this accumulates over time. This is quite significant, but you need to produce something that other people will find valuable, right? In our case, if I may just give a little plug, Felix. So for us, for example, especially given the situation that we had in 2020, where we have to really move mountains, right? We started doing things, and one of the things that I started working on was the Smart Interface Design Patterns, which is a video course. And I wanted it to be accessible, sustainable, affordable, friendly, and useful. That was kind of the important goal here. I'm going to drop in a link here. Here we go. And also we set up like a little coupon code for wonderful ADPList community, 20% off. So if you would like to join in, feel free to join in, of course. I just dropped in a link, everyone. And the thing that we have here is I don't want it to be expensive. And everybody I was speaking of was telling me like, we need to get like $500, $600. I didn't want that. And in fact, I just feel like, I just want, I don't know, if you get to sell like 10 or 15 of them a month, right? That would already be a lot of value that I would get by basically just maintaining it. And I would do more than this. So every year I go and record 5 or 6, depending on how it goes, extra sessions, which are like 20, 25 minutes each. And I add them for free for everyone who already bought it. And I think it's really important. I don't want to feel like a video course is just something that you put on there and then you sell until it's outdated and dead. I don't want it to die. Remember, I was talking about timeless. Timeless is very, very, very important to me. I want it to be timeless. I want people to come back to this 15 years from now and say, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's kind of useful. And it's been growing year over year. It started with like 6 hours. Now it's 10 hours. And I'm going to record 4 more things this year, right, as well. And it's going to add in there. And there is also like UX training, where we go into all these things like that I showed, the storming this with events and KPIs and all of that. And I think that this is kind of just a nice way to grow, right? And so what I would highly recommend to everyone here in this room, just create something. I mean, you don't need to make much, right? Just create something that would be like even, I don't know, like a UX research templates kit for $10 or whatever, right? Anything that works, right? But then be visible. And oh my, if you take a look at let's say 10 or 15 years, this can accumulate to be something magnificent, right? It really can. So that will be coming in whether something horrible happens in the world or not, right? So that's it. I would say that's the most important thing I learned, I guess.
Thank you so much for that, Vitaly. So start building your early passive income, and this thing compounds. And also, the power of being visible. These two comes together, and that could be incredible. Vitaly, we lost your video
as well, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So with that said, Vitaly, we have come to the end of today's session. Before we let you go, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Where can they read about you?
Well, apparently you cannot find me here on camera for some reason. So that's a little bit.
Now we can't find you on mic as well. So we have to,
so okay. This is like not a fancy camera, but sorry about that. I try to make it a habit to publish hopefully useful things on LinkedIn. So if you're interested, you can follow along there. I'm trying my best to make sure that you're not disappointed, right? So quite a few hopefully useful things here and there, and you can find the newsletter and stuff for design and UX mostly. So hopefully you'll find a bit of value in there.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Vitaly. We will share his Vitaly's LinkedIn, but I think if you just kind of Google Vitaly Friedman, you would see his photo first, and you would see tons of his profile. So you can see it there. And just as a quick plug as well from ADPList side, we'll be hosting a lot of sessions with amazing leaders in design and tech. With someone like Julie, Zhuo, Vitaly here. And also Don Norman and Jacob Newson. So tons of amazing people are coming to ADPList. So I believe we'd catch in the comments as well. So feel free to join us in the next sessions. Limited seats will be available for these sessions as well, as with all sessions. So with that said, Vitaly, we really appreciate you for spending an hour with us today. We know your time is precious as a consultant freelancer, but this is part of being the strategy, as you said, being here, being visible. So I really appreciate you for giving this entire community your time.
Okay, thank you so much, Felix. Just one thing, I think there was a note around the coupon not working. So it might be because I haven't set it up. So dear friends, hold on just a moment, if we could stay for just a second. That's a little bit disappointing. I'm really well, you see how prepared I am? No, I think it should be working. ADPList should be working.
So it should be, yeah. The coupon code is basically ADPList. I'm just gonna share it there.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. But you see, I'm not as well organized as I'm supposed to be.
Well, you know, sometimes it happens. So if anything, you know, just feel free to ping us. We will get it for you from Vitaly. But in that sense, you know, Vitaly's contact is out there as well. He will probably also share it on LinkedIn as well and on Twitter, so you can follow him there. And you know, let's take it from there. All right. Thank you all so much, and thank you so much, Vitaly, for being a part of this. We will be recording this session, and we have recorded, and it will be available for everyone in the next 1 to 2 weeks post-edit. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much,
see you all
everyone.
at the next session. All right. Absolutely. Thanks, Vitaly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Felix. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.